In this video, I'm going to go over step by step how you can travel the world for dirt cheap. The strategy involves no credit card point scheme, no couch surfing, and no gimmicks. Just proven strategies that have been used by frugal travelers like myself for years. Also stick around to the end where I'll reveal some common budget traveling mistakes that could cost you thousands of dollars. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Starting with step number 1, finding a cheap flight. If you want to travel the world, there's no way around flying. Your flight most often is and should be the most expensive purchase of your entire trip. On average, people traveling internationally spend 53.9% of their total budget on airfare. Because flights account for such a large percentage of expenses, no other money-saving hacks matter if you overpay for your flight. There's no sense in saving pennies at your destination if you wasted hundreds of dollars getting there. Fortunately, flights fluctuate in price more than nearly any other commodity. In fact, it's not uncommon to find flights discounted for over 90% off their normal price. Using the 3 bargain hunting methods I'm about to share, I've been able to keep my airfare expenses to less than 25% of my total travel budget, saving myself over $5,000 in the process. Before I get into how I find these dirt cheap flights, here's a few things to keep in mind. First, get any ideas of flying luxuriously out of your head. For the purpose of traveling as cheap as possible, you're going to be in the back of the plane with me. Did you know that there are seats in the back of planes with no windows so they can be used for prisoner transport? What? I do, because that's the seat I try to book. If we were in any worse seats, the grounds crew would be throwing us in the cargo hold. That's the price we pay for traveling the world on a budget, and I'm happy to pay it if it means I get to go to exotic places and do cool things. The second thing to keep in mind is date and destination flexibility. If the only place you're willing to go is Paris or Tokyo for 8 specific days during peak season, the probability of you finding a deal on a flight is extremely low. However, if you just want to go abroad somewhere cool at some point in the next year, you'll have plenty of options to choose from. Flights can be found for next to nothing if you're willing to fly at weird times to less popular destinations. With those 2 considerations in mind, here are the 3 methods I use for finding cheap flights. Number 1, scanning Google Flights. Google Flights is without a doubt the best search engine for finding cheap flights. It draws prices from all the other major booking sites, plus has exclusive offers. Just select the airport you'll be flying out of and the window of dates you'd like to travel in. Like I mentioned earlier, the more flexible you are with the dates and departure airport, the higher chance you have of finding a deal. Then scroll around the map until you find a cheap destination you'd like to visit. You're not going to find the deal of the century every time you do this. In fact, most of the time you won't find any deals. However, if you practice scanning for deals consistently, it's only a matter of time before you find something. Finding just one crazy deal makes all the time commitment worth the effort. When I'm looking to travel, I make a habit of scanning Google Flights once in the morning and once before I go to bed. This is the method my brother used to find a round-trip ticket from San Francisco to Santiago, Chile for just $100. That's a flight that normally costs over $1,000, meaning with this one purchase, this method saved him over $900. The second method I use for finding cheap flights is joining email newsletters. This is the most low-effort technique, as all you have to do is sign up and wait for the deals to come straight to your inbox. There's a reason the Going, formerly Scott's Cheap Flights newsletter is so popular, because it works. Some sites offer paid versions of this service that might help you find deals faster, but I've personally never tried any of these. I just sign up for these free newsletters and enable notifications on my phone so I'm one of the first to hear about these deals. These prices don't last long once news of them gets around. I frequently see online where people have scored flights to places like Vietnam, Colombia, and other exotic destinations for just a few $100 using this method. The last place I look to find deals on flights are budget travel forums. This method is the highest effort but also has the craziest results. There are plenty of these forums on sites like Reddit and Discord focused solely on finding the cheapest flights possible. You have to filter through a lot of useless banter to find what you're really looking for, but the deals on these forums can be absolutely insane. Last May, my brother got word on one of these forums that the Hong Kong Board of Tourism was giving out 5,000 free round-trip tickets to Hong Kong. We entered the lottery and after 4 hours of refreshing our screens, won 2 free round-trip economy tickets to Hong Kong. I still ended up paying some airport fees, but ultimately scored a ticket that normally runs anywhere from $1,800 to $2,200 for $311. That's a savings of nearly $2,000 on one flight. These techniques aren't going to get you the deal of the century on a specific flight to a specific destination on specific dates, but what they will do, as they've done for me, is get you traveling. So now let's say you've used one of the techniques mentioned above and found a cheap flight to an amazing destination. Congratulations, you're done with the hardest part of traveling the world for cheap. Now on to step 2, finding a cheap place to stay. Past airfare, accommodation is the second largest expense for travelers, on average accounting for 21% of total expenses. That still leaves us plenty of room to cut costs here. While occasionally there are deals to be found on hotel rooms, as far as cheap accommodation goes, nothing beats a good hostel. A hostel is basically a hotel where rather than renting your own room, you just rent one of many beds in a bunk room. Common areas like kitchens and bathrooms are shared with other travelers. If you've ever stayed in a college dorm or a summer camp, the living experience is sort of an elevated version of that. Some have pools and game rooms for entertaining, while others have common areas more tailored to guests who are working remotely. From high-rises to small family homes, there's a wide variation of size, atmosphere, and amenities when it comes to hostels. Regardless of what type of hostel you're staying at, the economics don't change. Because they are so much more space efficient than hotels, staying in a hostel is a fraction of the cost. In Europe, a hostel will run you around $25 a night, whereas in cheaper countries like those in Latin America or Asia, you can stay at a hostel for under $8 a night. This is an example of a hostel I stayed at in Peru that ran me $7 a night and even had a pool, rooftop terraces, and a gym overlooking the Ica Desert. In addition to pricing, hostels have a few other advantages over hotels. For one, hostels host parties, walking tours, and other events where you can meet fellow travelers from all over the globe. This is great if you're solo traveling because it makes it super easy to find people to hang out with. Another great thing about hostels is the front desk service. Hostel employees are either locals or travelers who have been in the area for an extended period of time. They know the area better than anyone and can suggest activities to do, restaurants to eat at, and give practical advice like where to do your laundry or how to use public transit. For finding a good hostel, I'd recommend using Hostelworld. Hostelworld is basically the Amazon.com for hostels. You can narrow your search based on location, price, and reviews, and filter even further by selecting what amenities you'd like to have. In picking a hostel, your biggest consideration is deciding whether you want the hostel to get you to a destination or you want the hostel to be the destination. If you want to party while abroad, pick a hostel that hosts plenty of events. Whereas if all you're going to be doing in the hostel is sleep, pick one with a quieter reputation. Either way, I suggest always choosing a hostel that is highly rated, as the difference in price between a good hostel and an excellent hostel is usually only a few bucks. Now that you've found a cheap flight and a hostel to stay at, the heavy lifting, so to speak, is done. By following the first two steps, you save thousands of dollars on the boring necessities like flights and accommodation, and now have plenty to spend on the fun stuff like food and activities. That being said, the third step in traveling the world for cheap is being wise with your on-the-ground money. Notice I said wise, not cheap. You should ball out a little and enjoy yourself. We just don't want to waste money frivolously. So, I have apparently burnt through a quarter of my money for spending in 2 days of being here. So, we hit up the grocery store. Our days of eating out every meal have come to an end. In order to prevent overspending, make a budget of how much you can spend total and divide it by the number of days you'll be spending at your destination. For example, if you have $500 to spend and you'll be abroad for 12 days, that gives you an average daily allowance of $41.66. That doesn't mean you can never go over that amount. Some days you might spend $80 and some days you might only spend $20. The daily allowance just helps you keep a rough idea of how much you're spending relative to your total budget. Past that, go have a blast. The whole point of saving your money on the first two steps was to give you more freedom at this point. If you want to eat at a Michelin star restaurant and it's in your budget, go for it. If you're like my brother and would rather spend your whole trip drinking coffee and going to museums, knock yourself out. You've done the work, finding a cheap flight, booking a hostel, and budgeting. Now is the time to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Traveling the world. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned I would share a few mistakes that beginners make that end up costing them thousands. Well, here they are. Number one, bringing a checked bag. Not only is checking a bag going to cost you extra in airfare, but having to roll around an extra suitcase during your trip is just a pain. When my brother and I went to Europe, we shared an extra suitcase in addition to our backpacks, and boy was that thing annoying. Although you may be tempted to check a bag to bring along some extra clothing, it will just become a backache to carry and give you more space that you'll be tempted to fill with the next mistake. Mistake number two is buying junk souvenirs. Souvenirs may be the biggest money waster in the whole travel industry. You'll spend $30 on a mug or refrigerator magnet just to have it break in your bag or forget it and leave it behind. I'm not saying don't buy anything while traveling. In fact, I always try to bring back something for myself and family while abroad. My suggestion is that before you buy something, ask yourself, is this item A, something I could get back home for a better price? Don't pay an egregious price for some trinket you can order on Alibaba for $2.67. B, something I'm willing to haul around for the rest of the trip. And C, something I will either use regularly or enjoy looking at once I return from my trip. If it passes all three tests, get it. If not, put it back on the shelf and thank me later. Examples of good souvenirs include coffee or sweets that you can't get back in your home country. These make great gifts for people back home, as they won't be stuck with something they have to keep if they don't like it. Another good souvenir idea is certain fabrics that can be hard to come by. If you get a chance to buy a unique garment that you'll actually wear, I would highly consider it. The last common mistake to avoid is not wearing a fanny pack. One of the most expensive mistakes you can make while traveling is having your phone, wallet, or passport stolen. In most touristy areas around the world, pickpocketing is extremely prevalent. Having things in your pocket, as they would say in Colombia, is dando la papaya. Or in plain terms, you're asking for it. You might think you're fine because your pockets are deep, but trust me when I say pickpockets are professionals. They steal for a living. If you don't have some line of defense separating a hand from your pocket, you're making yourself a target. Wearing a fanny pack across your chest gives you a more secure place to keep your belongings while out and about. I feel very strongly about this one because my brother had his phone stolen out of his pocket while we were in Peru, and it could have all been prevented if we followed this simple tip. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that it helps get you traveling. If you like this video, be sure to like it, share, and I'll see you guys on the next one.